Did you ever give someone feedback calmly and with intention to help, but they still get defensive or feel attacked? Based on 14 years of experience as a psychologist, I've seen this over and over, where poorly delivered feedback creates confusion, how it triggers defensiveness, and how it slowly damages relationships, even when the intention behind is good. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 5 most common mistakes when people are delivering challenging feedback. And then I'll give you the bridge method, which is a simple and practical framework that I have developed in order to help people deliver honest and challenging feedback without hurting people and damaging trust in the relationship. Because most people think that people get upset or triggered because of the content of the message being negative. But in fact, most people get upset and triggered because it's not delivered in the right way. So let's get into it. Number 1, giving feedback that's too generic. Oftentimes people will say things like, you need to improve your communication, or you need to be more emotional intelligent, or you need to be more proactive. But the problem is that in the other person's mind, what they are listening is, what exactly are we talking about and when did that happen? In fact, if we look at the research, there is a research on goal setting theory that shows that vague goals produce vague effort. So when we give feedback that is too generic, people are left guessing. And guess what? When people are guessing, they either change the wrong thing or they don't change anything. And then what usually ends up happening is that the manager will get frustrated and they will often start thinking like, oh, this employee does not care about the work, or is just too lazy, or is uncommitted. But in reality, what's happening is that the problem wasn't the employee's motivation, but in fact was the manager clarity when providing feedback. If the brain doesn't have a clear target, it can't adjust the behavior properly. Number 2, ignoring how the tone and the posture change the meaning of the message. Many times the leaders will focus on the content of the feedback and completely forget the delivery, how they are delivering the message. But a message that is delivered with a tense face, with a harsh tone, or with a close posture can be felt as criticism. In fact, neuroscience shows that when our brain reads tone, when it reads facial expression, or our posture as threatening, our amygdala activates, and once that happens, basically we enter into this defensive mode. So even good feedback delivered the wrong way can be felt as an attack. So obviously when someone feels attacked, they are not listening to the message, they are not open to receive correction, they are just worried about protecting themselves. Number 3, skipping understanding. In many sessions, people often rush into correction mode. This can happen again, or you need to be better prepared next time, or this isn't acceptable. But when you skip understanding, when you skip showing that person that you are willing to understand why they did that behavior, they just shut down. Research on psychological safety is very clear on this. If people feel attacked, if they don't feel secure, they completely shut down and they immediately get into defensive mode and reactive. Okay? And this doesn't mean that you should lower the standards or you should accept everything. No. Here we are just, this simply means that we are acknowledging reality before asking them to change. It can simply mean something like, I see you. I understand there are constraints. I understand that maybe there is something even in your personal life that can be contributing for this behavior. Because when people feel understood, then obviously they will become less reactive and more willing to listen to you. Mistake number 4 is not defining what better looks like. So often what happens is people will rush into correcting what's wrong. They will say like, this wasn't clear, or you handled this very badly, or needs to be improved. And the person might even agree with you, but still have no idea on what exactly should they do instead? So I'm addressing what's wrong, but I forget to tell them what good looks like. So again, if we go back to the same principle, what happens is people often, because they are confused or they don't know what to do instead, because that's the way they have been doing for many years. So now they are going to either change the wrong thing, which is going to upset the manager, or they are not going to change anything. Okay, so and we are just going to keep repeating the same cycle again. Okay, so here we want to show them what we expect next time. Mistake number 5, pushing your view instead of inviting collaboration. This is probably one of the most overlooked mistakes that I see when people are communicating and especially giving feedback, where feedback just becomes this one-way lecture where someone is saying, hey, here's what's wrong, here's what you need to do. But the problem is that if people don't feel involved in the process, they are most likely just going to reject or push back. This is based on a psychological phenomenon called psychological reactance, where we have this natural tendency to push back every time that we feel our autonomy or agency being threatened. And we can see this earlier as 2 years old. Okay, so instead of pushing and telling them exactly what needs to happen, invite them into this sort of collaboration where they are also owning part of the solution instead of just being compliant with the order. As you can see, the problem with feedback is often not what we are saying, but how we are saying. And to solve this and to avoid these 5 mistakes, I created the Bridge framework, which is a framework in order to help us to give honest feedback without hurting or damaging relationships, but also in a way that makes change more likely. So let's break it down. B stands for background, and this is where we set up the scene, the context of what happened. And we should always, with the context, in any circumstance, we should always answer 3 questions. Where did that happen? When did that happen? And what are we talking about? Okay, so for example, last week when in our team meeting, I noticed that you kept interrupting John while he was speaking. Okay, so when? Last week. Where? In our team meeting. What? When you kept interrupting your colleagues or John. Okay, because in this way the person knows exactly the moment, the place, and what exactly are we talking about. Clarity is going to also reduce their defensiveness, because now they have specifics. Now they know exactly what you are talking about in terms of instead of just guessing. Okay, so R stands for the real behavior. And this is basically where we stop being generic and broaden, and we get specific, where we say exactly what's the observable behavior that needs to be changed. Okay, so instead of just saying, oh, you need to improve your communication, or just describing what happened, we are actually telling them the observable behavior. And this also helps us in terms of communication and even coaching people, because now they can actually see what we are talking about. Okay, for example, you can say something like, oh, I noticed that when your colleagues were speaking, you talked over them. Okay, or you kept interrupting them. Okay, this specific behavior is easier to change than just abstract labels. I stands for impact. Okay, and this is where we explain the costs or why it matters, the feedback that we are giving. Okay, oftentimes we just tell them what exactly needs to happen, but we forget to explain also them the cost or the weight for why we are telling them to change that behavior. Again, as human beings, if we don't really understand what we are being asked, chances are we are going to push or to resist changing. Okay, so here it's when we give understanding behind the reason why we are telling them, and also show them exactly the negative impact of that specific behavior. For example, we can say, when you kept interrupting your colleagues, it may seem like their input wasn't very valuable. And additionally, it extended the meeting beyond the planned time, which affected the rest of our schedule. Okay, so now the feedback actually carries weight, and they can see the negative impact of their behavior. It's not personal. It's just about the observable consequences and impact. Because again, meaning drives behavior. When we understand that our actions have impact and that impact is negative, we are more likely to change that. D stands for demonstrating understanding. This is basically where empathy comes in, okay? Demonstrating understanding doesn't mean that we are excusing the behavior. It just means that we are acknowledging the pressure, the intention, or the effort behind the behavior. For example, we can say to them, look, I know that you are under pressure. I know that you have a lot on your plate. I can see that your intention was to contribute, or that you were just simply trying to add value, okay? So again, it's not about, and often I get asked, oh, but I don't know if that was the intention. It doesn't matter. The idea is just to present a positive intent behind their behavior, so that in their minds, in their brains, they don't feel as attacked. They listen the feedback as not as threatening, and they are more willing to open to feedback and to listen to you. Okay, so even if the behavior is wrong, you still come across as expecting positive from them. Okay, and that makes them more open to listen to you and also to change their behavior. G stands for going forward. And this is where we define what right looks like. What is the expected behavior, or what is the good outcome that we expect? Because again, oftentimes we point and we hyper focus on what's wrong and what needs to be changed, but we completely forget to teach them and to show them what looks like. Okay, so for example, we can tell them something like, next time, instead of just jumping in and interrupting your colleagues, let them finish, press the hands raise button, and I will see that you want to add something or you want to talk, and then when I find the appropriate time, I will let you speak. Or if it's in person, you can say, just raise your hand or look at me and I will notice that you want to speak, and when everyone has contributed, I'll let you add your insights. Okay, so here we are not just pointing out the problem, we are pointing out the impact, but then we are coaching them, we are training them on what's the right behavior, what do we want and expect from them. We are giving them direction, and that's actually what a leader should do, is to lead, is to provide solutions, is to provide a better alternative. And finally, E stands for engage agreement. And again, this is often one of the most overlooked steps. Don't end with just a command, or try to engage and to involve them into the process. Try to end with collaboration. Ask them, does this feel okay? Is this fair? Does this sound right for you? Are you okay with this? Okay? Because this gives the other person a voice and makes them a collaborator, involves them into the ownership of finding the solution to the problem. Is just not you are dictating them and triggering the psychological reactance and the pushback from them. In fact, you are inviting them into a collaboration. You are trying to help. You are a teammates, and as teammates, you are trying to find a way that works for you as a leader, for your shared outcomes, but also for them in a way that helps them, in a way that it's not against what they want and what they need and what they are also able to provide. So let's put all this together into a practical scenario that oftentimes we can find in organizations. So let's imagine that we have a scenario where it's a low performance. Okay, so there's a team member output that has dropped. They have missed details, slower delivery, and lower quality. B, background. Hey, I wanted to talk about the KBR. So So let's put all this together into a practical scenario that oftentimes we find in organizations. So let's imagine that it is a low performance situation where a team member output has dropped. They have been missing details, slower delivery, and lower quality in their work. Okay, so applying the bridge framework, we need to start with the background. So for example, hey Louise, I wanted to talk with you about the QBR, which stands for Quarterly Business Review presentation that you delivered to the client last week. We are being clear, we are being specific. There's no ambiguity. It's last week, when the last week where the presentation, what the QBR, okay? R for real behavior. I noticed that there were a few typos in the report, and during the presentation you seemed unsure when explaining the reasoning behind some of the metrics on the slides. Again, we are delivering observable behavior, no labels, no judgment, just what happened. I for impact. I completely understand that mistakes happen. We are all human. But when a client presentation includes typos, it affects how professional we look. And when we can't clearly explain the logic behind the numbers, it lowers credibility and trust in our work. Again, feedback has weight. It's about standards and impact, not just the personality or against the person itself. We are giving the cost of their behavior. Now D, demonstrate understanding. I know that you have had a lot on your plate recently, and I can see that you have been trying to keep everything moving. Again, we are acknowledging the effort without excusing the wrong behavior. G for going forward. Moving forward, or next time, I would like you to focus on two things. First, always do a quick quality check before sending anything out. Whether that's using AI to scan for typos or asking a colleague or myself for a second review. Secondly, I need you to feel confident explaining the reasoning behind every key metric in the deck. If you are unsure, send it to me at least 2 days before the presentation and we will go through it together. Again, clear, concrete, actionable, and observable. Okay? E, engage agreement. How does this sound to you? Does this feel fair? Are you okay with this approach? Is there anything else that would help you? Okay? Is there anything else that I could do in order to help you improve the quality and consistency of our delivery? Again, we are shifting from command on telling them what to do into collaboration. We are a team, and we are trying to work together towards delivering a better work and output to the client. This brings us into a team and collaboration. It's not me against my employee or my teammate. It's us together in a way that improves everyone. And that's how you give honest and challenging feedback without hurting people. Because at the end of the day, the purpose of feedback is to help people grow, not to shut them down. But if they can hear you because they are feeling attacked, then the whole purpose of feedback is completely lost. But when the message is delivered in a simple, in a calm, and in a way that people feel safe, then the message can finally do what's meant to do, to help people grow.